All right. Let's see if we're live. Are we live? That is the question. Do we have audio? Let's see. Is there any sound here? Or is there no sound? Let's check this out real quick. Do we have sound? Anyone know if we have sound? All right, sounds like we have some sound. Cool. Let's just put this over here. All right, guys, just bear with me for a second while I set this bullshit up. And wait for some people to come in. I'm gonna pull up the chat on my phone so I can read along as well. Sorry about the boring bullshit. I'm sure it'll get more interesting right away. Let's see. Can we go into this? Just bear with me for it's interesting. All right, that's cool. I think I've got the chat on my phone. Holy shit, I'm a technical genius. I can see that I'm live as well. Let's close this. So, how's everyone doing tonight? I think we got everything set up and ready to go. Yo, sup Roberto? How are you doing, man? Alright, so I think we got everything set up. Let's wait for some more people to come in and then we're gonna get started. But for now, let's just play the track and you guys can get a little refresher, and while the track is playing, that gives me some time to pour my beer. So let's do this. That was a little bit of a refresher. Now I see some people have come in as well. What is up, guys? Yo, Joey. Yo, proost, maat. Ben, how are you doing, mate? Achom, how's it, man? Alright. Bruno, cool. Max, how's everyone doing tonight? So, you guys ready for this? Because I definitely am not ready for this. Or well, I kinda am. I got my beer right here, and yeah. So this is Ocean Machine, or the project of it at least. It's a bit of a mess. Basically, there's some bullshit down here that's not very important, not very interesting as well. But up here is the bulk of the track. And tonight I'm gonna show you guys some shit. If you have any questions, you know, just ask anything you want me to like go into in depth. Just let me know, because some things that I might find interesting, you guys might find boring, and some things that you guys might find really interesting, I'm like, oh well, I don't know. So yeah, just, you know, let me know what you guys wanna see, or if you have any questions about, oh, how'd you do this or how'd you do that. Yeah. So to get started, maybe we need to talk a little bit about the concept of the track in itself. Because, yeah, I don't know, it's hard to say, like, I'm trying to make it a little bit interesting here as well, because, hey, you know, I've made this track, what is it? Yeah, it got released over a year ago, and it was kind of been working on that way before then as well, so I need a refresher on this as well. And, you know, to me, I'm like, oh yeah, it's just a track, it's just something I threw together and blah blah blah, but you guys aren't gonna learn anything from me saying that, right? So, comments, surprise me. I will surprise you, probably. Maybe not in the way you want, but I think we all want to know how you made that kick. Yeah, so the kick, of course, it's the first kick you guys are talking about, because let's be honest, the other ones aren't that interesting, are they? So, this is probably the kick you're talking about, right? Yeah, so that kick, it's an interesting one, because when I made it, it's probably one of the it's a stupid thing, but it's probably the simplest kick I've ever made and the most easy one, and was kind of an accident as well. But I could go ahead and open the kick project and you guys can see, but it's really less interesting than you might think, actually. Right, let's see these other comments real quick. With the snare and the climax there, can you talk a bit? Yeah, I'm definitely going to talk about like the climax halftime bit as well. That'd be that's definitely kind of an interesting part of this track, I think. But yeah, we can let's just quickly go over to the kick project. You can just close this one out and let's find it. Boom. Oh my god, my naked desktop. Let's load this bitch up. Oh, thanks, Ben. So you think the other kicks are interesting too? Yeah, they're alright. I don't think they ever did as well as the first one. Also, in my opinion, they weren't... yeah, they were mixed a little weird compared to the first kick, but... Alright. So this is the kick project of the clean kick in Ocean Machine. And it's a bit of a fucking mess. It probably doesn't even make a lot of sense. It doesn't to me because I made this a long time ago as well, so I had to look over this last night quickly to try and at least make some sort of intellectual guess as to what I did, so you guys may learn something from it, but yeah. I think whatever happened. So, alright, the concept of the Ocean Machine kick was I had a kick in mind. It wasn't even meant for the track. Like, that kick was completely separate from the concept of the track. I made it way beforehand, and I was just sitting one night, probably bored, because when I'm bored I make kicks. So, I was bored, and I had an idea of a certain kick I wanted to make, I think. A kick, I had a certain sound in mind, but I just wasn't really getting that kick at the moment, and then I got frustrated with it, I did something stupid with it, and once I did that, basically the magic happened and you got the Ocean Machine kick. So, let's see, I think this is the first part of the Ocean Machine kick, and basically all this is yeah, this bullshit. Hold on, let me turn up this. It's just a really old fucking kick. It was somewhere... I usually start my kicks from either one of my own samples or just some random old bullshit that I found that I then just mangle up and turn into something. So I had this thing, which I think I tore apart a bit. Not even sure why. It's just an EQ punch. Here's just some talkie sounds. Talk, talk. Yeah, that's fucking awful. But it's just EQ some shit out. But yeah, basically I started from this old kick that I had, and then I did this with the punch, 2 extra punches on top of there. But basically it's not even important because I don't think that did anything in the final result of the kick. But yeah, it's just bad. And I probably rendered it, which I always do. In Logic, you have this function where you can like select whatever you want, and then you do bounce in place, and then it just puts a sample below here so you can work from a clean sample basically. So that's what this sample is right here. Zoom in a little bit. There you can see it's already a little more tight. I probably did a lot of EQing on this. I have this, which is just some saturation, which adds high-end spark to it. Yeah, after that there's another EQ on there, taking out some side frequencies of the low end, because you don't want any like low end on the stereo spectrum, at least not below like 60 Hz or something. There's Pro L. That's probably just to stop some bullshit. Very technical! Yeah, I just got Pro L on there just to stop some bullshit. Alright, what it's doing is it's stopping the attack from like going super crazy, basically. And it distorts it a little bit and makes it a little more round. Which is again just to push it up a lot. And then another EQ, just some tweaking. Here's a multi-band transient designer. This is just to like pull up the attack a little bit of the kick in the high end at least. Without... You can hear the kick becomes a lot more clicky basically. So after that I probably rendered this. That may have also been the point where I got annoyed because this wasn't what I was looking for at all, the result. So I wanted a different kind of punch sound. I think we can hear it over here if I am correct. Alright, yeah, so here it's already becoming a little more what the Ocean Machine kick represents, basically. So I've cut up the punch and the tail to EQ them differently, probably, yeah. So basically everything I did beforehand with adding high end and punch, I just basically filtered out because reasons. Then I added this little punch. Now, this is like a very basic kick. It's like a sine wave with a pitch envelope on it, aka a psytrance kick, basically. So I wanted one of these because, yeah, that would give me kind of the sound I was looking for this kick. But I had a hard time finding one, I think, or making it, because I was fucking around in Psylength just to get it, but I wasn't really getting what I wanted. So I just, yeah, went on the internet and I searched for psytrance kick sample, and one of the first fucking results was this, and like, cool. We can add that, and then we can just crush it and turn it into something cool. So this is already sounding a little more like the kick. So basically what I did was just, yeah, the original kick I had, take out some frequencies, and then put a punch over it, which is one of those sine wave pitch envelope punches. Then I probably crushed it a little bit later, which I like almost always do. So if you push the input on this, it'll... You get some really nasty distortion out of it as well, but... Just adding it a little bit will just give you a little bit of a compact sound. So going from there, we end up at the next step of the kick, which I think is here. No, it's not. What am I doing here? Alright, I think I know what I'm doing here. So this kick sample, and I'm sorry if this is very confusing, my kick projects are like a fucking mess all the time. But yeah, this is basically the result of combining these elements up here. Which is then, you know, bounced again. I probably did some, you know, limiting on that as well, as you can see. Then I added a layer below it. That one rounds it out a little more. Oh, basically all this extra layer is, because it's these two layers, this one isn't even important. I don't know why that's there, probably as a reference. So with the extra layer, I just took out a lot of high frequencies with a big shelf. After that, I added this gain reduction plugin. Basically what this is like a really, really, really aggressive compressor. And it adds a lot of saturation as well and just fucking smashes everything, basically. So I added that just to really like make it compact. Then I took the high frequencies out again, because I probably thought there was still too much. Yeah. Because this little compression plugin like adds a lot of attack. So if we take it off, it'll sound like this. So again, took all that bullshit out with this EQ. Because basically all this layer has to be is just a support layer for the original kick, just to make the low end a little more compressed. And it kind of already gives that like more... Find a suitable, interesting bullshit word for it. It sounds a little more angry. Yay. Nah, it's it just tightens up the low end a bit basically. And adds a little more. So once we did that step, we came over here. And this is where it gets interesting. Because this is the point where I got fed up with this kick. So let me duplicate this. I got fed up. And I was like, fuck this isn't working for me, or it wasn't sounding the way I wanted it to at that point in time. So I just took the kick, and up here in Logic you have this tab where you can like pitch audio files basically, so you can transpose them within the sample, which is a quick and easy way. Sometimes it doesn't sound the best for like pitching kicks in general, but for some kicks it can give like a cool effect if you go through the different time stretching algorithms. So yeah, I got angry with it and I basically was like, fuck it, let's pitch you down like fucking, I don't know what I did, probably like 12 or something. And then I was like, ah, that's kind of cool. So I kind of fine-tuned that a bit and found the pitch which sounded best, which was this. So basically what we got then, and it is on that. Like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. Let's work with that for a second. So, and hear it a little better. There's no EQ on it. So yeah, this is pitched down 3 semitones from the, 7 semitones from the original kick, which is here. And in order to preserve the punch, basically, I cut the punch off again, and the punch I didn't pitch down, basically. So this is the first part of the punch. And here's the tail. And then when we put them together, you get this. Which is basically, we're sort of getting into the tone of that kick. Then below here we have another layer. And another one. Yeah. This was the final thing I did probably to it. So I bounced these in place again, these 2 elements. And then on that I added another one of these gain reduction plugins. Excuse me. But this time I didn't do it as heavily, I guess. I also set the mix down a lot, or well, it's to set 75%. So basically this mix knob, you can like adjust how much of like the compressed signal and dry signal you want to put together. Because without it, it will sound like this. It just, it's whatever, right? But you can hear as soon as I add that compressor on there, it just pushes it up and it gives that tail the drive that it needs, basically. Then I EQ'd it a little bit, just a few little things, nothing extreme, just to push those low mids up a little bit. And then I probably clip the output because for kicks, I don't know why I do that, but I just got into the habit of clipping the master output of my DAW to get a certain sort of like nasty digital distortion, because I feel it works well on punches and stuff for some reason. So I just got used to working like that, and then I'll just bounce it and put it back into the project later. You can go as crazy as you want. Sometimes I'll use the inflator for it because it's kind of doing the same thing for it. I kind of kept this sort of like open as well. I didn't want to completely crush it because yeah, fuck that. It just sounds a lot better when it's a little more dynamic, this kick. But yeah, basically that is the whole process of this fucking Ocean Machine kick that everyone loves. It's like kind of simple because if you see my other kick projects, there's like so many things going on and so many different versions, and this was just like, oh, make this kick. It's not sounding the way I want it to sound, get angry with it, pitch it down because you're angry. And then, yeah, fine-tune it, and that's your kick, basically. So if there's any questions about this, let me know, and then otherwise we'll continue back to the other project. If you have any questions about, you know, maybe I really explained this poorly, who knows. Let me see, is there even anything else going on here? No, this is literally it. So let's see. No questions about this? Probably because I explained it too badly. Well, you know, ask away anyways. I'll go back to opening the other project because that might take a little while as well. Because it's fucking huge. Alright. Let's see. Alright, most interesting part of the stream where you can watch a fucking project load. It's the best thing ever! Oh. Don't look at the screen if you have fucking epilepsy or something, because these contact instances will fuck your shit up, mate. So we can see the sand dune, fucking, yeah, and logic loading, and it's very, very interesting. So yeah, this is what I have to deal with when I like render something and then I close the project down and then I want to reopen it because I want to change something. You have to wait for fucking ages. And I'm not on a slow computer, by the way. It's just that this thing is fucking way too huge, right? Let's see what's going on. Let's see. What's up with producers and saying, no, don't listen to this and scroll through here? What? Alright. Mose, yo! What's going on? Hello, Janine and Nicole, how are you doing? Manuel, hi, mate. Victor Maat. Max Holm, how are you doing? Renee. Kimberly, Rick, cool. Cool to see so many people here. Awesome. It's really cool. Alright. Hi, Mose. So I got a question earlier about the sort of halftime rhythm going on in the climax of this track. How to best explain that? Let me just fucking go here. Yeah, so basically, the way I work with these sort of things is once I have like a melody in place, and kicks together, I'll always try and look for some sort of like extra rhythmic element to kind of add. Usually that's like snares, because I like creating something that like emphasizes the melody as well. So if we just listen to the melody real quick here, we can hear that your kick, which is like, you know, your 4/4 thing basically. So we have add the bass and the kicks real quick. Basically then what I just try to do is like add rhythmic elements, and I'll usually start off with a snare, and I'll listen to the melody and I'll see like either I'll place my snares like on an up or a down beat which emphasizes a note in the melody or like a phrase, or I'll fill up the space between the melody depending on what sort of vibe I'm going for. And sometimes that can result in these sort of like more halftime sort of time signatures going on with the kicks. So if we add the snares in, you can hear. So yeah, I kind of try to create a sort of rhythm with that, and just where it feels right, I'll place the snares, and basically that's pretty much what creates this sort of halftime feeling inside of this climax as well. And then yeah, let's see. Have I got anything else interesting that making anything like halftimey-ish? No, I think in this case it's mostly the snares, just doing that and adding that sort of vibe. Also, this like is carried over from the break basically, so I kind of keep that rhythm going, which I have in the drums of the break as well. My legs are carry that over into this part. I think there's like these drums, if we solo these up, which is also doing a thing. So yeah, the halftime thing, it wasn't even something that I was like, oh, I'm gonna do a halftime thing in the climax on top of like the kicks, but it was just something that sort of just happened because it felt right and I already had something like that going on, so. But yeah, on the subject of that, it also kind of just worked with the kick and bass action that I have going on basically, which is just. We can solo that up for a bit as well. You can hear that. Yeah, that's another thing. Alright, I forgot about that. I have this thing where there's the stop in the bass on every, like, 4 of the measure. Like, that kind of, hold on, is this working yet? that kind of felt cool as well, and then it gives some extra energy when I add those little notes back in on the second part. So as you can see, it's when I do like a kick and bass line thing, I don't just do a straight beat sort of thing. I go kind of crazy with it, which you can hear over here. So yeah, I'm not just following like the root note of the melody with this bass line, I'm also adding these little like extra notes in there, which are following the top melody actually. Let's see. So if we add the melody back, you can kind of hear that these things are sort of following each other. That's kind of how I created that, or kind of made the bass line as part of the melody structure as well, just to make it a little more interesting. And that combined with those snares and stuff kind of gives that halftime feeling. Oh yeah, on the subject of kicks while we're here anyway, if we go back to like that main kick, or at least the first drop kick. Yeah, so I didn't do that much to it. I did EQ it a little bit in the project, just to make it fit with everything. Actually, I EQ'd it a lot, there's a lot of highs in here, right? So that's kind of like, yeah, this kick was way too dull anyway to work in this track, so I really boosted that shit. It's a bit much, but in the end, you know, fuck it. If it sounds good, it's good, right? Doesn't really matter. So let's see what else we got going on here. Yeah, I mean, there's some cool kick effects as well. Just... So I kind of took the main kick and I like tear it apart and create these sort of sounds. So this is just a stretched version of the kick, basically, I think. Yeah, so I stretched it here. I added Effectrix on there with a tonal delay. That's basically just to give it a little bit of tone. But yeah, you can tune it down here, by the way, to the key you want to have it. So if you I had at C1, I think, something, compare, yeah, C1. Because C is basically the key of the track here, so that works. Then I just had it layered with this sort of like Reese bass thing. Just really nothing interesting, it's just probably a fucking tweaked Spire thing with some fucking saturation on there, you know, just to make the entire thing cohesive. And again, the gain reduction plugin, because if you want to quickly crush something and give it some saturation, there you go. And if you put those together, you kind of get those little effects. Fun thing. How do I explain this? So the kick that I wasn't too happy with is still here, basically. It's this one. The only difference between that one and the one over here is the pitch. So this one is tuned to C and this one is tuned to F, basically. And why I did that was, well, this one sounded better in F, and F is the end of my melody phrase in this track anyway. If you look at the melody, if you look at the bass line of the melody, it starts on C and it ends on F. So what I did here to make this, to create some suspense in this mid-intro, is I just made the build-up, which I think I carried over in that sort of C signature, sort of, I think. Yeah, I think I did.
In restless dreams I fall.
Yeah, so what I did was I took the signature of the melody, and instead of keeping this mid-intro on C, which is kind of the key of the track and the root note as well of where it starts, I decided to take the melodic phrase and then keep it going on that F. So it kind of creates the suspense of like you want it to start again, but it doesn't yet. So this entire drop is in F basically for that suspense. And only once we get to this little break part here do I change it back up. So let's see, where can we see this easily? I think we have it on the lead or something. Sorry for the mess. But yeah, here the melody re-triggers again at the end of this drop. So that kind of gives that resolve and kind of makes it go like, how to explain that? I don't even fucking know. It kind of gives you that feeling of, oh yeah, it's returned to something and now it's building up to something again, which is kind of just a cool way to basically play with your melodies and chord structures and stuff to create tension and build-ups and kind of use that to your advantage to create some more energy, basically. That makes sense. So this entire thing keeps going on that F, and then it goes back to, you know, the main part of the melody, and or not the main part of the melody, but it goes back to the C, so it's back to the root, basically. And then this part of the drop, it kind of it keeps going a little more melodic, basically. So here, the first drop, you know, with the clean kick, that's pretty straight. And then once we get to this little break over here, you know, we introduce a new part of the melody, basically, or a little bit of a phrase at least, which is especially done by these staccato strings, which is just an arpeggiated sort of little thing. There we're kind of introducing the theme of the track, and then it drops again, and it kind of drops to something that's again a little more straight, but this time we're on C instead of the F, and then I slowly start to build in like melodic elements, so we can have a listen for that as well. Yeah, as you can hear in that part, it starts kind of, you know, becoming a little more melodic, and you start hearing back elements of the melody and kind of building the theme back around that. I also kind of do that with the kicks, because the kicks here are, in fact, pitched, actually. Just so this bullshit up. You can hear that. So that just introduces, you know, a little more melodic structure. Because I like having these rough kicks kind of pitched to a certain note and kind of following the main theme of the melody and stuff. And yeah, from there we kind of go into the break, basically, where all of the rhythm stops for a second, and we get into this really soundscapey sort of vibe. By the way, cool little trick. If you just want to create some really fucking nasty sounding... Here I have some more, I think. These are kind of like these really soundscapey... That's really messy, but if you take your kick, because that's basically just what it is, it's only a kick, and you kind of really fuck it up, so you basically add a really steep spike. That's the cool thing about the FabFilter EQs as well. You can kind of, you have these notes below here, so if you make a peak and you drag it to one of these notes, it's that note basically, and it'll resonate on that note, which is kind of cool. So with that, it's really easy to create these sort of tonal effects things. So here I have one, which is in this one on A sharp, because that's what's going on here in the bass line and the melody, so that fits the track right there. You basically just push it up all the way, well, not all the way, just to see what sounds good. And like this is gonna sound, well, shitty because there's nothing after it, but you get this really tonal sort of sonar bullshit. Then this EQ, that's more bullshit basically. That's basically, yeah, some really steep bell curve EQs, which are almost square, which gives this really nasty sound. Now, you wouldn't normally like use this in any sort of like mixing context. This is purely just for creative sound design and stuff. So this sounds kind of shit, but as soon as you add like a lot of distortion, in this case I have just a bit crusher. What's it doing exactly? It's kind of folding the samples inward, or it's using the fold mode. And it's just 15 dB of drive, and it's just, you get this really nasty sound. After that, I have a transient designer on there just for a bit more attack, so it becomes even more clicky because, you know, why not? Then I added another EQ, which is kind of to tame this entire thing. And then what really makes it happen is the delay and reverb. So yeah, for the delay, I have the stock Logic delay on there, which is like the delay designer, and it's on some sort of preset pattern, which just does some crazy random bullshit to it. As you can hear, it keeps going basically. And then you add the reverb, and that'll give a sort of soundscape effect for it. So that's just a cool way to kind of create some soundscapes with your kicks, basically. Because if you turn these EQs off, it'd just be distortion. Even that you could probably use for something, but yeah, once you add the tonality of it with, you know, a big boost. Kind of shape it with one of these, and you can create some really weird effects. Like so yeah, that kind of just, yeah, it's a cool way, I think, to really easily create some sort of effects kicks for your track, basically. So, any questions or things you guys want to see? Because maybe I'm rambling on too long about fucking effects kick, fucking soundscape things, you know? But yeah, we were at the break, basically. And there's a lot of interesting things going on in the break, I think.
Restless dreams I fall. Gargantuan waves are breaking all my anguish. Awaken me, but still I wander, and I just plunge into the sea of stars. Light struck me. I see this path upon the ocean's floor. I swim through currents.
So a couple of the main things that are making this happen is a filtered kind of kick, which is giving some sort of drive and rhythm to this section. Well, that's just, let's see, what is it even? It's a damage thing with a lot of filtering on it, which without it just sounds like this. So I liked that because when it's just a sub with this, it's it kind of gives a really nice round effect, and it works really well with the pads and stuff that I have going on. So it's pretty much, this is a big part of what gives the break that sort of drive. Yeah, thanks. It is, yeah, I think it's a cool trick for effects kicks, because you can like really easily just create a lot of racket and chaos, and then you can just like render those and, you know, re-edit them and stretch them, and it just, yeah, it's a cool little interesting workflow thing. Let's see, what was I doing? I'm sorry guys if this is really, I have to search for things as well, because yeah, I always get lost in this project if I'm zoomed in. I think this is another interesting part of the break. Yeah. So it's kind of this ampy, grindy sort of thing, which there was, I don't know where it is anymore. I had to render it in place because I think Omnisphere was being a bitch. I think I used Omnisphere for that. Yeah, pretty sure I did. This is... That's why I rendered it in place, because with the distortion on it, it keeps like triggering differently. Yeah, it keeps re-triggering in a different sound, and I didn't want that. I wanted it to be a little more constant, so just rendered it in place and EQ'd it a bit. I have a lot of filtering going on that as well, I think, if we look at the automation. Yeah, so the low end is out, and the low end comes in, and then it goes out again. So if we listen with everything. Usually when I have some sort of like transition going on, I like to take my like low bass elements that kind of continue throughout. I like to take those and take some low end out of them so that it creates a little bit of suspense and it kind of creates some openness, and then it comes back to like the low end and just makes things a little more dynamic. Another thing that we've got here is on this, yeah, let's look at this. Right, so what this is first of all, it's a multi-band compressor. And what I'm doing is I'm sidechaining the low end of this sort of pad sound to these drum impact things. So whenever these things are triggered by the sidechain input, it ducks down the bass a little bit. That way I can have a lot of different like low end elements in my track without it becoming one big giant puddle of bullshit, basically. So it just kisses it a bit, and just like 3 dB of gain reduction going on like the bass elements to sort of give that to give some space to the surrounding things. And yeah, over here we got another sort of signature thing that I like using a lot, which is just Foley samples of like you know, weather or just, yeah, general either nature sounds or city sounds or whatever, which is kind of like this. So yeah, that's just like, I don't know, some people walking down some sort of thing with some reverb on it, basically. I think that's what I did. Yeah, I just wanted to create a little more space on that, so I added some reverb, basically, as the most interesting part of that. And that kind of really gives sort of atmospheric vibe to the break as well, and kind of fills it out. And you know, there's little hints of things like those footsteps. They just like, they'll trigger your ear like subconsciously, and you'll be like, huh, what's going on there? And it's just, yeah, a little bit of candy to make it nice, basically. If we take those out, it just takes it down a little bit. There's not that much going on here then.
In restless dreams I fall.
As opposed to having these in there.
Gargantuan waves are breaking on my anguish. Awaken me, but still I wander, and I just plunge into the sea of stars. Light struck me. I see this path upon the ocean's floor. I swim through currents. My conviction now increasing at last. My legs are fed up.
another cool trick that I use for like build-ups and stuff, which there's a good example here, is let's see if I can find some elements that do it a lot. Yeah, I'll take some elements, pretty much all the elements, and I'll kind of automate them back down to mono. So in the build-up, we can probably hear it here. So everything goes mono there. And I do that to give the sort of big climactic part here some more impact. Because that then just jumps out at you again because it's pretty wide. And that can bring us nicely into some of the orchestral elements, which are here. We can just have a listen to what the orchestra is doing. From the build-up towards that big sort of climactic cinematic thing. So that's what usually takes a lot of time to program, because I do all of these things in like individual sections as well. So I'll like start off with writing a bass line basically, which is here on the basses. Stop. Cool. Thanks. All right. So I'll start with like a bed for the basses, and then after that I'll add a cello line. And then we'll add some violins to that as well. And all of these I kind of write different melody lines for little different things just to make it a little bit interesting. So the second violins pretty much just follow the cellos but an octave higher. But the first violins do something a little differently. That's pretty much all the strings, and then I have some brass things going on as well. It's just like a tuba and bass trombone, and on this side I have some... What do we have here? Got some trumpets. Whoops. Got some trumpets and a 6-horn little thingy, which do this pretty much. And all together it sounds something like this, with the choir as well. Some choir phrases going on. What are you doing? That sounded weird. Ah, right. I think I screwed something up here. Nice. You can go on mute. You can be muted too, I think. That interesting.
My legs are better.
And in the climax, we also have these orchestral elements still continuing. Just they're what's the word? I have them condensed a little. Like there's not individual strings going on. I just have the string ensemble going on with mostly choirs and some horns and stuff, which sounds like this. And to make that work, everything is like low cut, like a lot. Let's see if we can pull something up here. Yeah, there's basically no real, there's no low end. Also what I have is, it's sidechained again, using the LFO tool. So the first couple of milliseconds is completely down, just so that gives room for the kick basically. And I think there's another one on here as well, somewhere. Yeah, so also have like a more normal traditional sort of bump up sidechain going on. That's just to give it a little more rhythm under the climax with the other elements. So yeah, a lot of like low cutting and not a lot of like super mids, but more like high frequency stuff and things. And then like, yeah, sidechaining it to the kick, especially the first part, so it doesn't like interfere with the punch of the kick. That's probably one of the most important things to like adding these orchestral elements into your drops and stuff and having it sound clear and punchy and not like completely cluttered up. Because yeah, these sort of instruments, they don't really sit well together with hardstyle elements and really electronic stuff if you don't treat them to do that, basically. Which is to add some more high end, you know, take out all the lows and really like shape them basically to do what you want them to do. And these are also like really compressed, as you could probably hear, just because in the climax everything is loud anyway, so it doesn't need to be super dynamic. So in order to get the most out of like the orchestral elements in your climax, it's best to just like make them kind of flat and compress them a lot so that it's all forward all the time and you can really like hear all the individual elements and stuff. Sorry about that. Also here I just have the leads pretty much doing, what do I have them doing here? Good question. Right. I have the leads here and they are doubled up with the choir at this point. And that kind of gives this cool, sort of bigger vibe. So yeah, to kind of add a lot of like, or make your leads a little more dynamic and your melody a little more interesting, it's cool to use these choirs and the phrasing they have built in them. Because all of these are doing like a different little phrase. In solo they sound a little weird and choppy, but that's because I had to kind of shift them so they work with the melody and they're kind of more tight basically together with everything else. So I think those little details can like really spice up your melody, I think at least. Right. Let's see what's going on here. What are these? Is this anything interesting? Here we have. These aren't really doing anything anymore. Sorry, I just unmuted something and these aren't really supposed to be here anyway. There, that got rhythm. That's better. Also on my leads, I also sidechain those to the kick quite a lot. I think I have them on each individual channel here. Yeah. So I don't have them that much on this track, but I just have this attack pulled down a little bit, so it gives some space for the kick to breathe. And on the bus there's another one, so it's also pulling down my reverb a little bit to just to create some space for the kicks. And I find that this little trick, you don't really hear it when everything's playing together, but it really clears up, or it makes it easier just to mix the leads and the reverb and everything, just you know, just to make your mixing life a little bit easier, because otherwise things are going really crazy because you're trying to create big atmospheres and big reverb here and everything, and even doing something as simple as just sidechaining it so that there's this little couple of milliseconds that get ducked down for the kick is just enough to basically to create some space for the kick and everything else to breathe a little more. And yeah. Also, again, I have a lot of low cut going on my leads as well. This depends on the different leads. I have a lot of crazy EQ going on some of these because sometimes I go a little crazy and yeah, let's see, which one was crazy? Yeah, this sort of thing. If you see yourself doing this, here I kind of just left it at that point, but it's good to do yourself a favor and just start over, basically. Just kind of look at the general shape of what this is, you know, is creating, then just fucking delete the EQ and just try to recreate that shape with as few filters as possible, basically. Now, I didn't do that here because I'm stupid, but that would be a good way to kind of... it just makes things sound nicer, because the more EQ filters you add to it, yeah, it just... It can work, but it's better to just have as few filters going on as possible. Of course, it needs to be shaped exactly the way you want it to be, but you might want to not do what I'm doing here with all these filters and just try, because one of these moves can be done with one filter basically. It doesn't need all of this bullshit going on. So that's a little trick. Don't fuck with your EQs until they look like fucking mountains and everything. Just, yeah. Find a few things that need doing and attenuate or boost those and kind of leave the rest alone. All of these leads are going to a bus as well. I always send everything to a bus. And on that bus, I have a compressor, which is just compressing the leads a little bit. To kind of keep it a bit, not completely crush it, it just, you know, to glue the sound a little bit, right? If we solo these leads as well. In the second climax, I have some extra lead layers going on, so this compressor also helps it kind of even out like the volume differences between climax 1 and 2, because I'm adding these extra layers. Than it would be in climax 1. What else do we have going on? Yeah, we have some more EQ. I'm doing a lot of like, let's see, this is all stereo stuff, and then I just have this one high shelf which is set to the side of the spectrum. So I don't use a lot of like stereo imaging like wideners basically. I kind of choose to do it with an EQ, or just like take one area where I think, all right, I want this wide, so I'll set it to side, and I'll just like have, you know, your upper mids kind of in the side spectrum. I find that way it's just easier to shape your stereo image a little bit instead of everything just wide or everything narrow, basically. Yeah, so just doing it with an EQ it's a little easier for me. And I can also be like, oh, I just want the high frequencies to be a little bit on the side, so I can just boost that a little bit, and then you'll be done, and then the rest kind of stays normal, and it helps with phasing as well, basically. What else do we have on this lead bus? Yeah, so I have this multiband compressor, which is just clamping down on these low mid frequencies a little bit. I found that if I EQ'd these frequencies out a little bit, the lead would sound too thin. But if I left them in, it would kind of like conflict with the kick a little bit. So an easy way to like fix that would be to just have a multiband compressor in that area and just have it tuck it down a little bit. You know, there's not a lot of compression going on here. It's like it's a quite high ratio anyways, but it's not attenuating a lot of dB. Pushing it down a little bit and keeping the low mids in check. See this comment here. Hello Infirium, was wondering if you had any idea how to mix in 3D. Could be very interesting in hardstyle. What do you mean? I'm sorry, I'm scared to pronounce your name because I might really butcher it. So yeah, I'm scared of that, but that's an interesting question. What exactly do you mean by mixing in 3D? Because in audio, it's really difficult to kind of convey these sort of terms, because what means 3D to me might not mean 3D to you. Because, yeah, audio isn't really 3D in and of itself. So to me, everything that can be considered 3D is basically like where it's put in space. So like these leads have a lot of reverb on them, and that reverb is creating a space around it and kind of putting these leads in a space, right? So that to me is kind of the 3D effect, because the more reverb you would put on it, the more far back in the mix it would sit. So that's kind of the way I would measure 3D in audio. But if you have any sort of like specific thing, just, yeah, let me know, because I'd love to go in on some things, but if you have any, like, a specific example, what you mean by, like, mixing in 3D, I'd love to go into that. Also, I'm just going, like, through this stuff pretty randomly, so if you guys have any sort of questions or anything you want to know, you know, let me know, because otherwise I'll just keep going on about fucking technical stuff and maybe stuff that isn't super interesting, but yeah. I think it's fun. Oh yeah, another thing I have on my lead bus. Again, yeah, like I showed already, the LFO tool, just to dip down that spectrum a little bit. Or spectrum, what the fuck am I talking about? Just to dip down, you know, the attack of the leads a bit, to give space for the kick. Another thing I have on here is Virtual Mix Rack by Steven Slade. This is a free plugin, by the way. You can just get this, and it's called Shimmer. It's a saturation plugin by Slade Digital, basically. And what this does is it just adds some high-end crisp and saturation. So if I take it off, the leads sound like this. Turn that on, it just instantly it adds a lot of like high end, and it just saturates and kind of lightly distorts the high end to create this really nice sheen on top of it. I find this super handy for leads, basically, because leads can easily sound dull, or it's hard to kind of get that pronounced effect. Because if I were to kind of do this with like an EQ, it would start to sound a little more harsh, or at least it would start to sound harsh very easily. If you'd use saturation as opposed to EQ, it kind of creates more of this, like, these extra harmonics. Instead of just pushing up the harmonics that are there, it adds extra harmonics, which gives a smoother result, and it just gives this really like sheeny top end. So yeah, it's just got two buttons, which is Shimmer, which is the high end, which I'm boosting quite a bit on this lead. And Thickness, that's just where it saturates kind of like the low end, low mids a bit. I find super handy to have on leads. Let's see. Debo. Alright, that's easy. Alright. I hope I didn't butcher that again, because that would be... Oh shit, you mean like actually 3D specialized for VR, like? Damn, man, that is one hell of that's one hell of a concept, man. I don't think I'm qualified to answer anything on that, because honestly, I haven't delved too much into like audio for VR too much. Like, I'm barely scratching the surface of like audio for film and mixing in surround, basically. So I know exactly now what you mean by mixing in 3D, but yeah, I probably know less about that than you. So well, that's an interesting subject. It's definitely something I would like to look into. Send you a PM. Oh yeah, definitely send me a PM. I'm really interested in stuff like that. Cool. Let's see what else we got. Try to fucking do this on my phone. Daryl, good evening. How are you, man? Let's see. Michelle, how did you get inspired for making this track? The inspiration for this track came from the melody. I don't know, even I might have some of the original melody lying around here. Not even sure. Let's see. It might even be this. Hold on, let me check this out for a second. Well, that's definitely not it. That's a bunch of bullshit. Let's I think here's some basic form. I think this might be the most basic form that was left of it, I think. Yeah, probably that. Let's see. So I got inspired, yeah, by the melody, basically. I was just fucking around one day on my keyboard, as you do. I was just playing some notes. And let's see. Yeah, I think I just had this basically, this first phrase. And then I just did this. So I was just kind of doing that and playing that little bit. And I recorded that and I thought that was kind of cool. So then I just, you know, expanded on that. So I would record this in and then I would just start moving things around and I'd start, you know, creating an actual sort of riff or melody for it to kind of, just to see where it would go. And that's how I started this track. So it was pure just, I think the lead sound and the melody. Because I think I was fucking around with the lead sound for a bit and then the sort of like riff sort of lended itself to the melody because I was just playing around with it. I'm not sure. I got my phone in the way. Not even. Just kind of started with, yeah. I think it was something like. Yeah, it was. Or it's just something very simple like that. Just had that going on, I think. So I just started, you know, playing around. Just had something like that. I was, oh, that could be cool. And then I just, you know, I'm a terrible player, so I just, you know, hand-fisted it in, and then I basically started like fine-tuning it, pretty much. So that's how this track kind of started. Let's see. I think there's some more comments. Let's see. Very cool that you're doing these streams. I hope for something like it one day. Yeah, man. I hope this is kind of interesting because it's the first time I'm doing this, so it's pretty random, I think. But yeah, I really want to continue with doing these sorts of streams and going into different subjects that you might be interested in, you know, sound design wise, or you know, maybe like a track challenge or whatever. We'll figure something cool out, but it's definitely something I'm gonna keep doing. Might be asked for, but how long does the whole process of making the track take you, including the sound design, kick making, etc. The whole process, yeah, it depends. Like, for me, this track took a fucking long time. Not even because there's so much in it, but sometimes I just get really sick and tired of working on a track and I just leave it alone for a while. Also, I had the climax part figured out, and the second climax, and I had the break, but I didn't have anything before that, and I felt like it needed something else. And then, yeah, I kind of just accidentally made that kick, which I was talking about earlier in the stream. That was kind of just an accident, and then I kind of... something just clicked, and I had this idea of, oh, I can make this cool sort of drop that kind of, you know, emphasizes the impact of this kick a lot, and I could add that to the track. But something like this would take a couple of months for me, but I'm not like continuously working on it like every single day. Hours wise, I wouldn't even know. Like sometimes I'll just spend a couple of hours tweaking one stupid sound and it can go on for a long while. But in terms of the kicks, that also kind of depends. I usually spend about 2 days on a kick. One day, a couple of hours of just shaping, and then the next day, I kind of finalize the kick, kind of. And then usually, if I have a kick finished and then I start working on a track, I'll customize the kick that I already have for that track. So, for instance, what I think is very important as well is to match everything with the key. So these days, if you listen to that kick, a lot of these like modern raw style sort of kicks or whatever, they emphasize the mid punch. Hold on. Let me just grab span here so I can show you guys this real quick. So as you can see, these kicks kind of have this mid-range sort of peak going on here. That's kind of a really, you know, the typical modern thing you see in hardstyle, and especially like raw style and stuff. But the point with that is, we're just gonna add a clean EQ so it's easier to demonstrate. When you add a sound like this, or a peak, it's gonna have a tone to it and it's gonna resonate. So it's very important that this mid-range peak, especially if it's like really tonal, it's important to make sure it's in key with your track. So if I've made a kick in, say, you know, G or whatever, and the punch is on G as well, then I'm gonna have to pitch it up and kind of change it to fit with this track, of which the key is C. So I can show that here as well, because at the end of the climax, these kicks pitch down. So it goes from C down to an A, and then G sharp, and then F. And you can see on span that the mid-range peak will change, because I pitched that according with the subtail. And that's basically just to make sure that it, you know, sounds good with the melody. So, especially these days, I kind of, you know, if I make a track, I'll start with a melody, and then, you know, once I'm satisfied on the key of that melody, I'll see what kind of kick I want to have for that. I'll see what I have lying around, and I'll just tweak it and edit it until it works for that. So sometimes it goes a little quicker to kind of find a kick, and sometimes it'll take me a day or two or whatever just to create one that will work with it, basically. Kind of hope that answers your question. I might have gone a little too much into it, but yeah, cool. Anything else? Anyone else got any questions before I continue on other things as well? Holy shit, I think I'm already going for like 1.5 hours. Damn. All right, no worries. You guys think it's cool, it's cool. Any cool things that are interesting to have? Yeah, so can't be too much for real gigs. No, like, that's the thing. I'm scared that you guys will get really bored of this, but honestly, if someone is streaming, like an artist, doesn't matter what they do, if, you know, if I'm interested in them, I can basically, if I have a day off, I'll watch their stream for like fucking 6 hours long, and I can be entertained by that, because there's so much to learn, and it's usually fun because there's some bullshit going on, and yeah, music, so cool. But yeah, another thing that I like to do is I like to sidechain the fuck out of my reverbs as well. So I have this, I've here, you can see the lead tracks, right? Of all these, all these lead tracks. I've sent the output of those to this bus, right? So that I can, you know, control them all together, all the layers. I can compress them, EQ them, and, you know, the saturation and whatever I already showed you, all together. And what I then like to do is I have the reverb set up on these buses as well. So when I'm just like starting the track, I'll have the reverb on the individual tracks and the delay on the individual leads, just because that's easier. But then once I start to get into a little bit of the mixing, I'll send those to a bus, I'll turn off the reverbs on those, and then on the lead bus, I will have these sends, and on those sends I'll have the reverb. So I can control the reverb with this. Now what this allows me to do is to have, you know, obviously a reverb, which in this track is a fucking long one, by the way. 7 fucking seconds. But it worked. Then after that I have a compressor on that. And the sidechain input of that compressor is set to bus 4. And bus 4, as you can see, is the lead bus. So it's triggered by the leads themselves. So if the leads are playing, it'll compress the reverb down, so there's less reverb. And once the leads stop, the reverb will pop back up, which I can demonstrate here. So once I stop it, the reverb just kind of, you know, it kind of blooms up a bit. If I turn it off, you can hear the difference. It's kind of a busy melody, so it's hard to kind of hear that, but maybe here. So what happens with this is basically when the melody is playing, the reverb is just down a lot, basically, at this point. Yeah, at some points it's about 8 dB down and, you know, pushed down by the melody. That way you can have the leads really clean and up front, but whenever there's space within the melody, the reverb will pop back up. So you have the best of both worlds. You have a clean sound to mix, and you have the reverb when there's space for it. And that just makes everything a lot tighter, and you can get away with a lot more. And after that, I also have an EQ on my reverb. This one isn't EQ'd so heavily. Well, there's a low cut on it, but yeah. So I have about, yeah, set to 330 hertz. This is just on the reverb channel. So there's no reverb going on below like this 330 hertz, because you don't really need that on the lead reverb anyway, because that just, you know, adds mud and stuff. Sometimes if it's too harsh, the reverb, I'll dip a little bit of mids as well. That can kind of clear it up a bit, and that's the advantage of having your reverb on like a send. You can really shape it a lot more and control it. The same goes for the delay. Delay is the same thing. The Logic delay has an EQ built in, so yeah, there's nothing going on this delay below 580 hertz. And then again, afterwards, there's another compressor which is compressing it, or sidechaining it to the lead bus. It's a little less, you know, because I wanted the delay to be a bit more round to give space to the leads and give it a little more width and stuff. But you can go crazy with this as well and do whatever you want. But here's just a basic, you know, quarter note and eighth note pattern. I also like to take some highs out of my delay, because I find that it just cleans things up a little bit. So here I have it set to like 11K. Nothing above that. Nothing above that will be in the delay, and that just kind of tightens it up. But more importantly is that low end in the delay. So like if you have it set to, I don't know, 100 hertz or something, you're gonna have a lot of that low mid buildup potentially, if you're not careful. And it's not really necessary anyway to have it, because you have those huge kicks and stuff that are filling up that space. So I just want to clean that up for this stuff. And the leads themselves will have have some more low mids going on, because if I open up Span again. Come back! Too much mixer stuff. Alright, here's Span. You can hear that you can see that in the leads there's more stuff going on in the low mids. But this is an area that can get muddy real quick, so because I also have, you know, all of the orchestral stuff going on in my climax, and the big snares, which are, you know, which have a lot of the low mids going on. I find it important to, you know, things like reverb and delay to kind of take all the low end out of those, kind of really scoop them up, just to get a really tight sound going on. Because that's another thing, like I'll shape, because I have the kicks and snares hitting together. What I'll do, and I'll solo the snares for a bit. I think keep closing everything. So I'll check like where the snares are hitting. Which is now your 200 hertz area. I think I have these tuned as well to the track. I kind of always tune my snares to either a fifth or the root note. I think these are, what are they? I think these are tuned as well. Or at least nowadays I always make sure that I tune my snares like really carefully. But yeah, this 200 hertz area, where the snare is hitting, I'll just make sure that that is kind of EQ'd a little bit out of the kick. So as you can see here, there's quite a big dip at the 200 anyway, and that just gives space for the snare. I don't really like that frequency in the kick sometimes anyway, so I kind of just find a place so they can both sit really easily. The alternative would be to, again, potentially put a multiband compressor on your kick, finding the area where the snare is sitting, so in this case it would be that 200, and then just sidechaining it to, you know, find your snare, click it, well it's not this in this case, but then you can trigger it, and then once the snare is triggered, it'll push that frequency down. That's another way to do it. Some people prefer that. For me, it just depends on the track, I guess. So that's kind of how I approach those things together. Let's see, what else have we got? Yes, like I said, not too much low end in reverbs and stuff because I have busy climaxes with fucking, you know, this orchestral stuff going on as well. And all of that kind of needs, you know, a space in the mix as well. So it's really key for me to kind of find places to cut things and make space for other things and kind of sacrifice some things in one sound to add to another and stuff. What else do I have going on here? Yeah, we got these fucking... super, like... I just have this like super distorted soundscape going on here as well, which is sidechained and it's kind of going on below the lead. If we take everything off, it's just the normal lead, pretty much. But it's got a lot of reverb on it. And then I just distorted the living crap out of it with this Runsider plugin from Huey. It's a nice distortion plugin for some like crazy effects as well. Just... Yeah, so it keeps going for a while. And I have it sidechained to kind of fill up some space as well and kind of give this vibe. That's also kind of where the name came from, because I felt this like fucking soundscape melody thing was kind of like an ocean because it just kept going and going with this distortion on it. I was like, oh, this is kind of like an ocean, and then I just called this sound Dirty Ocean Machine basically, and it's kind of how the name stuck. And I kind of started working the theme a little more around that then as well, I guess, with the vocals basically, because that's also referencing some like stuff that could be referenced to the ocean and stuff like that. Let's see. Do you check for mono compatibility a lot, or doesn't it matter as much nowadays? I often find that when my lead sounds nice, it just disappears completely when in mono. How do you prevent that? Yeah, very, very good. Good point. Yeah, mono compatibility. I haven't even talked about that. Holy shit. Yeah, I still find it very important. Not even so much to the fact that oh, it has to be mono on mono, you know, sound systems because you know, that's happening a lot still these days. But just because even if you're sitting like between your studio monitors and they're set up correctly, it just sounds kind of off to me when they're out of phase. So I definitely check for that. I don't know, usually your interface, or at least my interface, just has a mono switch on it, so I can just switch everything to mono. But what you also could do is just like, I don't know what DAW you're using, but in Logic you just have this utility gain plugin, and there's also a mono switch on that. I think most DAWs will have some sort of plugin where you can, you know, set the mono compatibility. Mono compatibility, sorry, I'm going way ahead of myself. Where you can set it to mono and just put that on your, you know, master bus, and then you can turn it on. So as you can hear, these leads are kind of mono compatible. They're not even like super mono compatible, but I do try to make sure that there's at least something going on. And one way to kind of avoid getting lost and getting your leads out of phase. It's a little more difficult to show because I don't think I have that much done here. But because the leads in this track aren't that complicated, it's just a few layers. But sometimes what I'll do is I'll just make sure that I at least have one layer that's a little more mono, basically. So the way my leads will be built up is I'll have one main sound or whatever that is very present in like the mono spectrum. And then I'll have another layer below that, maybe that's like a big, you know, high-end noisy saw. And I'll push that out to the side a lot. So maybe that one will get lost in mono then. But because you have that other lead on top that does have that mono compatibility, you're kind of in the safe zone. Because then there's at least some sort of mono content going on. Another thing, I don't think you were here when I was talking about that, is to avoid really fucking your phase up, is when you make a lead. I don't have anything on this one. Instead of using stereo wideners, which kind of can really easily, you know, make you go too far and then you'll pull it too much apart and they'll cause phasing issues, is to instead use an EQ. So this one is kind of basic, but sometimes I'll really sculpt it. So I'll put Pro Q on there, Pro Q3 in this instance, and I'll listen to it. And no, I still have it in mono. But what I'll do is I'll take a peek and I'll set the you know, where it affects, basically, because you can set it to mid, side, left, right, you know. And then I can, you know, take the side and be like, all right, it just needs a little more high mid present in the side. And then I'll just do that. And it'll kind of just boost that. Now on this lead, it doesn't do that much because this lead is quite mono. What's giving the stereo effect on this one is also just the reverb and delay a lot. But on other leads, you can kind of choose to be like, all right, I just want some stereo imaging going on here, right? And then maybe you're like, oh, well, in the low mid, it needs some more on the mono side. So you do it on the mid. And that way you can kind of sculpt your leads in a way for the stereo spectrum that they'll have that little bit of extra presence and width and stuff without completely destroying the phase, because you're not taking the entire track and going like wide or mono. You're just taking little bits of it and kind of pushing those out. And I find that helps me a lot because I don't even have a stereo imager. I just use the EQ and use the mid-side function on that to create extra width in that. Another thing is panning your leads. So like if you have, I don't have it here. This track is like the worst fucking example for this, but In other tracks, I'll be like, all right, one layer of the lead can go to the left, and then another one, you know, can go to the right, and then those will fill each other up a bit. And that'll also create stereo without having like mono issues, because if this lead on the right is a different lead than this one on the left, they'll collapse to mono without creating any sort of phasing issues, basically, or causing phasing issues. So it'll just... And if you then, you know, fill that up with another lead in the middle, you basically have a really wide lead without it having any sort of phasing issues. So that's just an easy and quick way to get that. Yeah, I guess it's, you know, to go back to the question a little bit, it is still important in the sense that, yeah, I do make sure that everything works in mono just for the sake of it, and it just feels a little better. It makes it sound a lot more full, because sometimes a lead, it'll sound cool at first, but then when you start mixing it, if it's out of phase, it can give a lot of issues, and you can't really get it to sit right in the mix, and you're kind of struggling with it, and sometimes, yeah, it's, yeah. You know, going back, taking all of the stereo imaging off and trying some more basic effects, like, you know, panning one lead left and one lead right and one in the middle, or, you know, the mid side with the EQ. And then also, you know, if you add a delay, if you have like a big ping pong delay, that also adds stereo. So instead of actually, you know, widening the lead too much, you can just use a delay for that. And then that'll add that extra spectrum as well without pushing it too much. And that way you ensure your mono compatibility, basically. So I kind of hope that answers it a bit. So yeah, I have on my interface, which you can't see, sorry. On my interface, I have a mono switch. And I can just switch it to mono and I just listen and see if everything's going all right. So if I'm producing or sound designing, I'll just collapse it to mono to see if it works. And if it really doesn't work, then I'll try to figure out what's going on within the sound to get it back to work in mono. And I do keep in mind, like, if it's a main sound, right? If it's an important sound that like has to carry the track, I'll make sure that it's really mono compatible and that it always kind of works. For more smaller sounds that might be effects or something, sometimes you want that super wide out of phase sort of thing going on for the effect of it, and that way, you know, for that you can do that, because hey, most everyone is listening in stereo, and then the one person that isn't listening in stereo, then they just don't hear that effect. As long as like the main parts of your track are mono compatible, you know, so the leads, the basses, well, obviously the basses, and the kicks and stuff, you can kind of get away with, you know, having a sort of, I don't know, maybe a riser effect that's like really wide, and that riser effect will seem larger than life. But then if you listen in mono, then it'll be gone. But that's kind of, you know, overseeable. So that's kind of how I approach it these days. Like, it is important and it isn't important at the same time. It's just that it helps for mixing and creating an overall well-rounded sound for like your main elements, but then for like effects elements, you can kind of sometimes go wild with it and see what sounds good, you know. And sometimes out of phase might work for that. So I kind of hope that helps. Mind blown, great tips. Oh, thanks, man. I'm glad you enjoy this stuff because, yeah, I enjoy talking about this anyway. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I do. But yeah, most of it just comes to, yeah, thinking smart with it, basically. And kind of trying to be like, all right, where can I put this sound? Because usually the most basic, like, mixing tools you have are the most effective. So, like, you know, your panning can do so much more. Like, sometimes you'll be, you know, maybe you'll have a hi-hat going on and it's just kind of clashing, or it's just not really sitting the way you want. You know, maybe panning it, like, to the left, like, a little bit will just give that extra space. So I don't see so many people anymore, or like going into that, but banding is like super important just to like create space. Because pretty much anything can be like, yeah, as long as it's out of the way of something else, it'll be much easier to mix. So the same thing goes for the leads and the stereo imaging and stuff like that. I'm trying to think if I have something that's really out of phase here or just for the effect of it. I'm not sure if I do. No, I don't think so. I always kind of try to have my sounds a little more in phase. And yeah, just the width will come from the balance between the sounds. Because again, width in sounds is also kind of subjective, right? Because the thing is, you can make everything wide and then everything will be wide, but then if everything is wide, then it doesn't really give that impressive effect anymore. So if you kind of create a balance between elements that are really narrow and then wide again, that'll, you know, instantly give the illusion of width as well. So like, you know, just keeping your kicks really narrow or something, that'll give the leads a lot more room to do that. Or if you have like a mid intro where you're building it up to have some sounds that are really narrow and some sounds that are really wide to kind of give that effect. So, I hope that answers your question a bit. A lot of things going on. Let's see. We could take a look at the vocals for a bit. Maybe that's interesting as well. We got some time. People are still interested anyway. And then we might start to wrap it up a bit. And then do more things in another episode. All right, let's see. So we got these vocals starting in the break, which are all my shitty vocals, basically.
Stop!
That's that. Let's start in the break because that's kind of where some interesting shit happens.
In restless dreams I fall. Gargantuan waves are breaking all my anguish. Awaken me, but still I wander, and I just plunge into the sea of stone. Light struck me.
Why I wanted to go into this as well and segue. Here I do have a stereo thing going on, but it's not a widener per se. It's a stereo maker, so it makes it sort of pseudo stereo. So it's just an extra thing in the vocal that makes it stereo, basically. And I add that with a mono vocal.
Still I wander, and I just plunge into the sea of stones.
That will be another way to kind of create some stereo effects from mono signals, to take one of these stereo maker sort of plugins and work with that. So that's a cool way to do it. Well, Mo, thanks for taking the time for the stream. Gonna rewatch when I have the time. Yeah, Darrow, you have a great evening too, man. Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna be streaming every last Wednesday of the month from now on for a foreseeable time. So yeah, catch you soon, man. Cheers. So yeah, these vocals. Let's see, do we have anything cool going on?
Under, and I just plunge into the sea of stone. Light struck me.
Yeah, these are also like really pitched down, I think. Yeah, I got these pitched down pretty much a lot. So if you're like, if you're someone who, that's maybe a cool tip, I don't know, I think it's interesting. If you're someone who records vocals yourself and you don't have a super low voice like me, there's a way you can kind of record your vocals, which makes them easier to pitch down and kind of gives a crackly effect. So if you ever wake up in the morning and your voice sounds like this, where you basically have that rattly fry thing in your voice, if you kind of learn to talk with that, and it's kind of quiet, so you have to be upfront to the mic a bit. But if you record your vocals like that, so you kind of speak like this, and you kind of go down like this. If you do that sort of stuff, it's when you then artificially pitch your vocals down and add some distortion to them, those little cracks and pops in your vocal, they kind of trigger it and make it sound really grungy and kind of give a cooler effect for pitch down vocals. Can't even hear them when they're down because I have so much.
But still I wander, and I just plunge into the sea of stones. But still I wander, and I just plunge into the sea of stones.
So yeah, basically that's pitch it down with this vocal transform plugin in Logic. Then I have a lot of compression going on with the gain reduction plugin again, which is just slamming it. Then I have the stereo maker plugin, which just makes it stereo. And that kind of smears it a little bit as well and kind of gives a cool effect. Then I have another pitch shifter, which is pitching it down another 3 semitones. And then I have an overdrive plugin, which is kind of distorting it a little more. And yeah, just a de-esser for utility's sake, and cutting out some annoying frequencies in the vocal. And then layering that up with the main vocal, you can kind of give this extra dynamic effect.
Awaken me, but still I wander, and I just plunge into the sea of stones.
And then here we have some affected scream going on. Just some really kind of wanted it to sound like ass basically, but kind of in a good way. To kind of create a more atmospheric sound instead of just really in your face. So that's just one of my screams, which I recorded. Which there's not a lot of level, it's really low down in the mix anyway, but I utility EQ, compression. And then just again making it stereo on this one as well. A lot of reverb. And I did like this really notchy EQ, which I normally wouldn't do like this, but it kind of gave this cool sort of cave effect to it, and that's kind of what I was going for anyway. And that kind of brings you into the next part of the vocals as well.
Plunge into the sea of stone. Light struck me. I see this path upon the ocean's floor. I swim through currents.
Hey, also another thing I always do on vocals is I'll automate. Let me find the ones that have a lot of it going on. I'll automate the delay and the reverb manually. So that way I can choose how much of a tail is going on each thing. So as you can see here is the reverb, which I'm just automating up and down for the different parts of the vocal.
In restless dreams I fall.
So you really get that long tail at the end, but when the vocal is actually happening, there's not a lot going on. You can achieve the same thing with, you know, the compressor trick and sidechaining it, but I find that doing it manually sometimes gives a little more control, especially for these sort of parts. So yeah.
Gargantuan waves are breaking all my anguish. Awaken me, but still I wander, and I just plunge into the sea of stones.
So yeah, that's just kind of how I affect my vocals to create some more depth and keep control over them, but still have them, you know, be a little bit atmospheric and all over the place. But when they need to cut through, I'll just, you know, dip the reverb down a bit and let them cut through, basically. Let's see, do we have anything here?
Conviction now increasing at last.
Yeah, so here we just have a vocal with a sort of radio effect going on. And how I created that radio effect was just to add a guitar amp on top of it, or a guitar amp plugin, basically. So this amp will just, without it, it'll sound like this.
Conviction now.
Oh wait, there's also, oh yeah, this gain reduction plugin also has a lo-fi button on it, and I think that one was on too.
Conviction now increasing at last.
Yeah, so both those.
Conviction now increasing. Conviction now increasing.
So it kind of gives that really crunchy sort of guitar amp, or radio effect, basically. Which is kind of a cool thing, a kind of cool way to sort of affect and give some dynamics to different vocals and, you know, just give some variety to it, right? And then it leads up to this bigger scream, which goes into the big part, basically.
My lungs are failing!
Just, yeah, one of my screams with some delay, EQ, nothing super special, I think. I have this pitch plugin on it set 3 semitones down and the mix at 19, so it's really barely in there. But because this is a single vocal, it just gives a sort of like, just fattens it up a little bit just to give an extra bit of oomph to it. Take that off. You can barely hear it anyway, but
my lungs are failing! My lungs are failing!
It just helps a little bit. And then, yeah, here are more radio vocals, I think.
I see no, I see no, I see no, I see no. Remaining surface light.
And again, I'll have the delay, or the echo in this case, automated on there.
I see no.
So it goes up, and then when the next one hits, it's kind of back down so it doesn't clutter itself up.
I see no, I see no, I see no, I see no. Remaining surface light. My mind is alive as I burst through its grasp.
Yeah, and this is in the build-up to the climax, right before it drops, and that's just a double, layered scream, basically. Sort of not full-on scream vocals, but kind of a bit more talky, I guess, with a bit of rasp and distortion going on there. So it's this layer with the other one.
My mind is alive as I burst through its grasp. My mind is alive as I burst through its grasp.
The bottom one is really not meant to be alone in anything, it's just to give some tone to the top one.
My mind is alive as I burst through its grasp.
And then there's this back verb in front of it. So the way I would create a back verb for something like this is I'll duplicate the channel. Now take this first sample. And then I'll reverse that sample first. Which in Logic there's just a button for it and it reverses the sample. Let's take this fade off. Then I'll just add a fuck ton of reverb. Once I'm happy with that, I'll bounce that in place again. Then I'll re-reverse that. And then we got this. Which if you add it to there.
My mind is alive
instant perfect back verb. So yeah, that's kind of that. What else? Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of it already. I've been going for more than 2 hours at this point. Are there any of you guys left even? If any of you have any questions, yeah, ask them now, because otherwise I'm gonna start wrapping this up, because yeah, we've been going for a long time already, and I think I've covered a lot of things already for this sort of overview, deconstruction sort of episode type of thing. So let me know what you, if you have any questions or anything left, and otherwise gonna end the stream. Some water. All right. So I don't think there's any more questions coming in. I don't know how big the delay is at this point, but I think no one has any more questions left. Cool. So I think that'll be it for tonight, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this. It may have been a bit rambly or whatever and all over the place, but I hope you learned something, and I'll definitely try to get better at this in the future as well. This is the first time I'm doing this anyway, so yeah. But I'm looking forward to the next edition. What I'm gonna do for the next edition is still a secret, but keep up to date, stay updated, and yeah, we'll see you guys at the next one. And have a good night, guys. Cheers.